Get your black ass up when I'm talking to you! Did your mama not teach you a goddamn thing?
Judge Gerald Hawthorne slammed his gavel down.
You're trash, you hear me? Trash with a pulse.
Brenda Taylor rose slowly, cuffs digging into her wrists.
Your Honor, I'm a nurse. I save lives for a living.
Shut your mouth. Nobody asked you. I've put away hundreds like you. You're not special. You're just next.
Brenda breathed in slow, breathed out slower.
That's okay, Your Honor. The truth doesn't need your permission.
Hawthorne's face turned red. He leaned forward, teeth clenched.
You think you're smart? I will bury you.
But that judge had no idea what was coming. Have you ever watched a powerful man destroy his entire career with his own words? Yeah, that right there, not normal. Let's get into the story. Let's rewind. Before the courtroom, before the cuffs, before any of this nightmare started, 6 months earlier, Brenda Taylor's alarm went off at 5:15 in the morning. Same time every day. No snooze, no hesitation. She swung her legs off the bed, feet hitting the cold hardwood floor, and got moving. That was just who she was. The house was small, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that smelled like coffee by 5:20 and toast by 5:30. Nothing fancy, but every corner was clean. Every shelf had a purpose. On the hallway wall hung 3 framed photos. The first, Brenda in navy dress whites, standing tall, 22 years old with the whole world ahead of her. The second, her nursing school graduation, cap tilted slightly, smile wide. The third, her son Elliot, holding a Little League trophy above his head like it was the World Cup. That hallway told you everything you needed to know about Brenda Taylor. 8 years in the United States Navy, combat medic, attached to a SEAL unit in Kandahar, Afghanistan. She didn't sit in a safe room filing paperwork. She ran into gunfire. She held pressure on wounds while bullets snapped past her ears. She saved lives, including 2 Navy SEALs during an ambush that killed 4 others. For that, Commander Raymond Cole handed her a challenge coin personally, looked her in the eye and said, "I owe you 2 of my best men." Brenda never talked about it. She carried that coin in her scrubs pocket every single shift, quiet, close, like a heartbeat only she could feel. After the Navy, she used the GI Bill to earn her nursing degree, settled in Cedar Falls, Virginia, got hired at Cedar Falls Regional Hospital, night shift, emergency room, the hardest hours in the hardest unit, and she loved every second of it. Her co-workers adored her. Patients asked for her by name. One night, an elderly man came in with chest pains, terrified, shaking, convinced he was dying. Brenda held his hand, looked him in the eye, and said, "Mr. Adams, you're not going anywhere tonight. Not on my watch." He calmed down within minutes. A coworker once asked her, "Bren, how do you stay so calm when everything's falling apart?" Brenda smiled. 12-hour shifts are nothing after Kandahar. Every morning before work, she packed Elliot's lunch, turkey sandwich, apple slices, a little note tucked inside the bag. Sometimes it said, "You're my favorite human." Sometimes just a smiley face. She drove him to school, kissed his forehead, and watched him disappear through the front doors. Then she went home, slept 4 hours, and did it all again. That was Brenda Taylor's life. Quiet, steady, built on discipline and love. Now let me tell you about the town she lived in. Cedar Falls, Virginia. Population just under 12,000. The kind of place where everybody knows everybody. Friday night football. Church on Sunday. Neighbors waving from porches. Sounds nice, right? It was, depending on what you looked like. Brenda was one of a handful of black families in town. Most people were polite, friendly even, but there was always that invisible friction. The way certain store clerks watched her a beat too long, the way Elliot got pulled aside at school for having an attitude, while white boys roughhoused in the hallway without a word. Nobody said anything outright. They didn't have to. The message was built into the silence. And at the center of that silence, sitting right on the town square, was the Cedar Falls County Courthouse. And inside that courthouse sat a man who had been running things his way for over 2 decades, Judge Gerald Hawthorne. 63 years old, silver hair slicked back, face always a shade of red, like he was permanently annoyed by something. He walked slow, Talk slower. Every word is measured. Every pause was designed to remind you who was in charge. In Cedar Falls, Hawthorne was untouchable. Golf buddy to the sheriff. Elder at First Baptist Church. Framed photos on his office wall with state legislators, congressmen, even a former governor. 22 years on the bench. Not one serious challenge. Not one complaint that stuck. But behind the closed door of his chambers, the mask slipped. Off-color jokes about black defendants, comments his staff laughed at nervously, sentences that hit harder when the face in front of him was darker. His clerk, Donna Whitfield, noticed. She had been noticing for years. She hadn't said anything. Not yet. Now here's where the story turns dark. It was a Tuesday night, 11:45 p.m. Brenda had just finished a double shift, 16 hours on her feet. 16 hours of blood, sweat, screaming patients, and machines beeping nonstop. Her scrubs had a dried stain on the sleeve from an emergency earlier, a car accident victim, 17 years old. She held that kid's hand while they stitched him up. She was exhausted, not just tired, the kind of exhausted that sinks into your bones. But she drove carefully, hands at 10 and 2, eyes on the road. Route 14, a dark two-lane stretch between the hospital and home. No street lights, just the hum of her engine and the white lines disappearing under her headlights. Then, blue lights, flashing in her rearview mirror. Bright, blinding, filling the inside of her car like a strobe. Brenda's stomach tightened. She checked her speedometer, 53 in a 55 zone. She wasn't speeding. She pulled over slowly, tires crunching on the gravel shoulder. She put the car in park, turned off the engine, placed both hands on the steering wheel. She knew the drill. Every black person in America knows the drill. Footsteps on gravel, heavy boots, slow and deliberate. A flashlight beam hit her side mirror first, then swung straight into her eyes. She squinted but didn't move. Officer Craig Ballard, 29 years old, white, buzz cut, jaw tight like he was chewing on anger. He had transferred to Cedar Falls 6 months ago from a bigger department up north. What Brenda didn't know, what nobody in town knew yet, was that he'd been transferred after an internal complaint. A black motorist had accused him of excessive force during a routine stop. The complaint was resolved internally, which meant buried. Ballard leaned into her window, didn't say good evening, didn't say ma'am, just shone that flashlight directly in her face and said, "License and registration." Brenda reached for her glove compartment, slowly, deliberately. "I'm reaching for my registration, officer." He didn't acknowledge her, just watched. The flashlight never moved from her face. She handed him both documents. He barely glanced at them. "You know why I pulled you over?" "No, sir." "Your rear left taillight is out." It wasn't. That taillight was working perfectly. The dash cam mounted on Ballard's own cruiser was recording the entire scene, and it would later show both taillights glowing bright red. But Brenda didn't know that yet. "I had it checked last month, officer. It should be fine." "Are you arguing with me?" "No, sir. Just letting you know." He stepped back, shone the flashlight through the backseat window, moved it slowly across the seats like he was scanning for something. The beam landed on her medical bag, a standard emergency kit she kept in the car. Gauze, gloves, a stethoscope, basic supplies. "What's in the bag?" "That's my medical kit, officer. I'm a nurse at Cedar Falls Regional." He stared at her for a long moment. The radio on his shoulder crackled. Somewhere in the distance, a truck rumbled down Route 14. "Step out of the vehicle." Brenda's heart dropped, but her face didn't show it. She unbuckled her seatbelt, opened the door, and stepped onto the gravel. The night air was cold. She could feel it cut through her thin scrubs. Goosebumps ran up her arms. "Turn around, hands on the vehicle." She compiled. Ballard radioed for backup. Within minutes, a second cruiser rolled up. More blue lights, more gravel crunching. Now there were 2 officers standing behind her on a dark road in the middle of nowhere. Ballard walked to her car and opened the back door. "You don't have my consent to search my vehicle, officer." He didn't even look at her. "I smell marijuana." There was no marijuana. There had never been marijuana. Brenda didn't smoke, didn't drink, hadn't touched a substance stronger than ibuprofen in years. It didn't matter. Ballard tore through her back seat, tossed her jacket on the ground, pulled out her medical bag and unzipped it on the hood of her car. Gauze packets scattered. Gloves fell in the dirt. And then his fingers found it. A small bottle. Prescription medication. Tramadol. He held it up under the flashlight and read the label. The name on it wasn't Brenda's. It belonged to a patient, an elderly woman from the ER earlier that week. During a chaotic shift, the bottle had ended up in Brenda's kit by accident. It happens. Ask any ER nurse. In the chaos of a 12-hour shift with back-to-back traumas, small items get misplaced. Brenda saw what he was holding and immediately explained, "Officer, that's a patient's prescription. It was left in my bag during a shift. My supervisor can confirm. Save it." He turned the bottle in his fingers like he'd found gold. "Possession of a controlled substance. That's not mine. The patient's name is right on the label. I said save it." He grabbed her arm, spun her around. The handcuffs came out, cold steel. He clamped them on her wrists, tight, too tight. The metal bit into her skin. She winced. "Officer, the cuffs are too tight. You should have thought about that before you decided to carry drugs." He walked her to his cruiser, opened the back door, put his hand on top of her head, and pushed her inside. The seat was hard plastic. It smelled like sweat and disinfectant. The door slammed shut. Through the cage divider, Brenda watched Ballard talking to the second officer, laughing, actually laughing, like this was entertainment. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She couldn't reach it with her hands cuffed behind her back, but she saw the screen light up through the fabric of her scrubs. A text from Elliot. 10:58 p.m. "Love you, Mom. Good night." She couldn't answer. She closed her eyes. One tear rolled down her cheek. Just one. She wiped it on her shoulder and straightened her back. At the station, everything moved fast and cold. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The smell of burnt coffee and floor cleaner. She was photographed, fingerprinted. Her personal belongings are sealed in a plastic bag. She asked to call her son's babysitter. "You'll get your phone call when we're done processing." She asked for her union representative. "Sit down and wait." She sat, alone, in a holding cell with a metal bench and a flickering light, for 4 hours. The next morning, she was brought before a magistrate, and that's when the nightmare got worse. The charge wasn't simple possession anymore. Ballard's report had been updated overnight. Now it read, felony possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute. Intent to distribute. Based on what? Based on Ballard's written statement that the tramadol was loosely stored in a manner consistent with street-level distribution. One prescription bottle, clearly labeled with the patient's name, in a medical bag next to gauze and gloves. And this officer had the nerve to call it street-level distribution. Bail was set at $50,000 for a woman with no criminal record, no prior arrests, not even a parking ticket. Brenda emptied her savings account to post bond. Every dollar she had put away for Elliot's future, gone. She walked out of the courthouse into the morning sun. The air should have felt like freedom. It didn't. By that afternoon, Cedar Falls Regional Hospital suspended her pending investigation. Her nursing license, the one she'd spent 4 years earning, was now under review. The career she'd built from nothing, the life she'd stitched together after the military, was unraveling, thread by thread. She drove to her neighbor's house to pick up Elliot. He ran to her and hugged her so tight she almost broke. "Mom, where were you? I called you and you didn't answer." She held his face in her hands, forced a smile. "I'm here now, baby. That's all that matters." But inside, something was cracking. And the worst part? Her case had just been assigned to Judge Gerald Hawthorne's docket, the man who had been waiting 22 years for someone exactly like her. Brenda hired Derek Saunders. He wasn't expensive. He wasn't famous. He was a public defender with too many cases and not enough hours in the day. But the man believed in justice the way some people believe in gravity, like it wasn't optional. Derek reviewed the arrest report, read it twice, then read it a third time. He set it down on his desk and said one word: garbage. Every line of Ballard's report had a hole: the taillight claim, the marijuana smell, the intent to distribute language for a single labeled prescription bottle. Derek had seen bad cases before. This wasn't just bad. This was manufactured. He filed a motion to dismiss. Grounds: illegal search, no probable cause. He subpoenaed the dash cam footage from Ballard's cruiser. If that camera showed what he suspected, a fully functional taillight, the entire case would collapse. The motion landed on Judge Hawthorne's desk, and that's when Brenda Taylor learned what it feels like to stand in front of a man who decided your fate before you walked in the room. The courtroom was quiet that morning. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your chest. Brenda sat at the defense table in a borrowed blazer. Her hands were folded. Her back was straight. Same posture she learned in the Navy. Same discipline. Hawthorne entered. Everyone rose. He sat down and opened the file like it was junk mail. Derek began his argument. Laid it out clean. The traffic stop had no valid basis. The search was conducted without consent and without probable cause. The officer's claim of smelling marijuana was unsubstantiated and contradicted by the absence of any marijuana in the vehicle. The dashcam footage would confirm everything. Hawthorne didn't look up once. When Derek finished, the judge removed his glasses, slowly, polished them with a cloth, put them back on. Then he spoke. Motion denied. Derek froze. Your Honor, we're requesting the dashcam footage be reviewed as part of... I said denied, counselor. Officers in this county have my full trust. I'm not gonna sit here and let you put a decorated officer on trial because your client got caught with drugs. He turned his eyes to Brenda, cold, deliberate, like a man looking at something on the bottom of his shoe. And you, Miss Taylor, you do well to take this process seriously, because I certainly am. Derek tried once more. Your Honor, with all due respect, the evidence clearly... Hawthorne cut him off, voice rising, gavel raised. I've been on this bench for 22 years, counselor. 22 years. Don't you dare stand in my courtroom and lecture me about evidence. One more word, and I'll hold you in contempt. Sit down. Derek sat. Brenda didn't blink, but under the table, her hands were trembling. At the clerk's desk, Donna Whitfield watched the entire exchange. Her face revealed nothing, but under her desk, she opened a small notebook, and she wrote. The prosecution came to Brenda with an offer 2 weeks later. Plead guilty to a lesser charge. Misdemeanor possession. 6 months probation. No jail time. Sounds reasonable, right? Here's what it actually meant. A conviction on her permanent record. Automatic revocation of her nursing license. A felony-level background flag that would follow her to every job application, every apartment lease, every school volunteer form for the rest of her life. They were offering her a deal that would erase everything she built, and they called it mercy. Derek was honest with her. He sat across from her in his small office, files stacked everywhere, coffee going cold. Brenda, I believe you're innocent. I believe we can prove it. But with Hawthorne on the bench, going to trial is a risk. He's not going to give us a fair hearing. He's already shown us that. Brenda looked at him, steady, no tears. I didn't do anything wrong, Derek. I'm not going to stand up in a courtroom and say I did. Not for a deal. Not for anyone. He nodded. Then we fight. But outside that office, the world was already closing in. The Cedar Falls Gazette ran a story. Small. Page 4. Headline. Local nurse charged with drug possession. No context. No mention of her military service. No quote from her side. Just the charge. And her photo. Pulled from the hospital staff directory. Within days, the whispers started. At the grocery store, at the school pickup line, at church. People who smiled at Brenda last month now looked away. A parent pulled their child from Elliot's carpool without explanation. Another mother told her son he probably shouldn't hang around Elliot for a while. Elliot came home one afternoon, backpack dragging on the ground, eyes red. Mom, did you really do something bad? Nah, hold up. This part right here? Yeah, this one actually gets to me. She lost everything. Her job, her savings, her reputation, and she didn't even do anything wrong. Like not one thing. And that's the part people miss. The system didn't fail her. Nah, it was never built for her in the first place. Brenda knelt down, took his hands. Baby, look at me. I didn't do anything wrong. Some people made a mistake and we're going to fix it. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? He nodded, hugged her, but she could feel his doubt. A 12-year-old boy who had never had a reason to question his mother, now carrying the weight of a town that had already made up its mind. That night, after Elliot went to bed, Brenda sat alone at the kitchen table. The house was dark except for the light above the stove. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the challenge coin, the one Admiral Cole had pressed into her palm in Kandahar. She turned it over, ran her thumb across the engraving. She picked up her phone, scrolled to his number. Her thumb hovered over the call button. She put the phone down. She didn't want to burden anyone. She'd always handled things alone. That was her way. Meanwhile, Derek was doing what he did best, digging. He pulled 10 years of sentencing data from Hawthorne's court. Every case, every charge, every outcome. And when he laid it all out on a spreadsheet, the numbers screamed. Black defendants in Hawthorne's courtroom received sentences averaging 40% longer than white defendants for identical charges. Motions to dismiss filed by black defendants were denied at 3 times the rate. 3 times. Same charges, same evidence, different skin, different outcome. He also found something about Officer Ballard. 2 prior complaints, both from black drivers, both for the same pattern: fabricated traffic violations, unwarranted searches, aggressive behavior. Both complaints were dismissed by internal review, buried, just like the one that got him transferred to Cedar Falls. Derek compiled everything into a formal motion for recusal. He argued judicial bias, statistical evidence, pattern of discrimination. He filed it with the court. Hawthorne read it in his chambers, alone, and then he denied it, himself. The man accused of bias ruled on his own bias and found himself not guilty. He called Derek into chambers afterward, closed the door, leaned across his desk. "You file one more stunt like that, counselor, and I'll have you disbarred. I'll hold you in contempt so fast your head will spin. And your client? She'll be sitting in a cell while you're filling out paperwork. Are we clear?" Derek walked out of that room with his jaw tight and his fists clenched. The trial date was set, 3 weeks away. Brenda was running out of time, running out of money, running out of options. She drove to the one place she still felt safe, Cedar Falls Community Church. Pastor Clarence Moore met her at the door. He didn't ask questions. He just opened his arms. They sat together in the empty sanctuary. Wooden pews, stained glass casting colored light across the floor. Silence that felt holy. "Pastor, I don't know what to do anymore. I've done everything right my whole life, and it doesn't matter." He took her hand. "Brenda, sometimes the Lord sends reinforcements you didn't even know you needed. You just have to be willing to ask." That night, Brenda sat on her bed. The house was quiet. Elliot was asleep. The challenge coin sat on her nightstand, catching the light from the hallway. She picked up her phone. She dialed Admiral Raymond Cole. It rang twice. "Brenda, that you?" She closed her eyes, and for the first time in months, she let her voice crack. "Admiral, I need help." "Admiral Raymond Cole, let me tell you about this man. Rear Admiral, United States Navy, retired. 32 years of service. SEAL commander. 3 combat tours. More classified operations than most people will ever hear about. After retirement, he became one of the most recognized veterans' rights advocates in the country. Congressional testimonies, national television appearances, a seat on the board of the Veterans Justice Coalition, one of the most powerful legal defense organizations for military personnel in America. When Raymond Cole walked into a room, people stood up. Not because he asked, because they felt it. And Brenda Taylor had saved 2 of his men. On that phone call, Brenda started with an apology. "Admiral, I'm sorry to bother you. I know it's been years," and Cole cut her off. His voice was calm, absolute, like a man who had already made his decision before he picked up the phone. "Brenda Taylor, you held a tourniquet on my SEAL's leg for 40 minutes under enemy fire. You were bleeding from your own shoulder, and you didn't stop. You saved 2 of my best men. Don't you ever apologize to me. Not ever. Now tell me everything." She told him all of it. The traffic stop, the fake charge, the judge, the denied motions, the plea deals she refused, the newspaper story, Elliot's question. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Cole spoke. 4 words. "I'll be there Friday." He didn't come alone. Friday morning, Cedar Falls County Courthouse. The parking lot was already different. Two black SUVs that nobody recognized. A news van from a national outlet, not the Cedar Falls Gazette, not the local evening news. National. Someone had made phone calls. Big ones. Inside the courtroom, the gallery was full. That had never happened for a case like this, not in Cedar Falls. Brenda noticed the faces immediately. In the second row sat a legal team from the Veterans Justice Coalition, 3 attorneys in dark suits with briefcases that looked like they cost more than Ballard's cruiser. Behind them, a reporter with a press badge from one of the biggest networks in the country, notebook open, pen ready. And in the front row, 2 men, sitting straight, shoulders square, dressed Navy uniforms pressed sharp enough to cut glass, ribbons across their chests, eyes forward. She recognized them instantly. Petty Officer James Dawson and Chief Warrant Officer Nathan Brooks, the 2 SEALs she had saved in Kandahar, the 2 men she had kept alive with her bare hands while the world exploded around them. They were here. For her. Brenda's breath caught. Her eyes burned. She blinked it away. Not now. Not yet. The trial began. The prosecution presented its case. Thin, fragile, held together with Ballard's lies and Hawthorne's willingness to ignore everything else. The prosecutor spoke for 20 minutes. It felt like reading a fiction novel out loud and calling it evidence. Then, Derek stood up, and he did something nobody expected. Your Honor, the defense calls Admiral Raymond Cole to the stand. The courtroom door opened. Cole walked in. Navy dress blues, perfectly pressed, gold buttons catching the fluorescent light. On his chest, rows of ribbons that told the story of a lifetime at war. Silver stars, bronze stars, a purple heart. The weight of every decoration pulled the air out of the room. His shoes clicked against the marble floor. Each step is deliberate, each step loud in the silence. Every eye in that courtroom followed him. The prosecutor stopped writing. The bailiff straightened up. Even the court reporter's fingers froze above her keys. Hawthorne's face changed. It happened in slow motion. The arrogance drained. The color left. His lips parted, but nothing came out. He knew. He knew exactly who this was, and he knew what was about to happen. Cole took the stand, raised his right hand, swore to tell the truth, sat down, adjusted the microphone once. Then he spoke. My name is Rear Admiral Raymond Cole, United States Navy, retired. 32 years of service. I commanded SEAL operations across 3 theaters of war. He paused, turned his head, looked directly at Brenda. And this woman, Petty Officer Brenda Taylor, ran into gunfire when everyone else was running out. She held a tourniquet on my SEAL's leg for 40 minutes while rounds hit the dirt around her feet. She was wounded herself, and she did not stop. She received the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal for valor. She is one of the bravest human beings I have ever served with in my entire career. He turned back, faced Hawthorne dead on, eye to eye. His voice dropped low, controlled, the kind of quiet that's louder than any shout. And the idea that this woman is sitting in this courtroom, shackled, humiliated, treated like a criminal for a medication error that any nurse in any hospital in this country could make, while the officer who fabricated the traffic stop walks free, is a disgrace. A disgrace to this court, a disgrace to this state, and a disgrace to every principle this nation claims to stand for. The courtroom was dead silent. Not a cough, not a whisper, nothing. Hawthorne's hand was shaking. He reached for his gavel, but didn't pick it up. His mouth opened. Admiral, this court doesn't operate on character testimony. Cole didn't blink. Then let's talk about your sentencing record, Your Honor, because I brought that data too. The gallery erupted. Hawthorne slammed his gavel, but the sound was weak now. The authority behind it, gone. The gavel kept slamming, over and over, but no one was listening anymore. Order! I will have order in this courtroom. Hawthorne's voice cracked on the last word. His face had gone from pale to something closer to gray. Sweat beaded along his hairline. His hands gripped the bench like a man trying to hold onto a ledge. Derek didn't wait. He stood and spoke clearly, loud enough for every microphone and every notebook in that room to catch it. Your Honor, the defense moves for immediate dismissal of all charges against Brenda Taylor. The traffic stop was based on a fabricated violation. The dash cam footage confirms the tail light was fully functional. The search was conducted without consent and without probable cause. The officer's claim of detecting marijuana was false, and the charge of intent to distribute has no evidentiary basis whatsoever. This case should never have reached this courtroom. He placed a folder on the bench. Inside, the dash cam footage transcript. Ballard's prior complaint history, the sentencing disparity data, 10 years of numbers that told a story Hawthorne had spent 2 decades trying to bury. The prosecutor sat frozen. He looked at his files. He looked at Cole sitting on the witness stand, jaw set like granite. He looked at the national reporter whose pen hadn't stopped moving. He looked at the 2 SEALs in full dress uniform, staring straight at him. He stood up slowly. The state withdraws all charges against the defendant. That was it. No fight, no argument, no dramatic legal battle. The moment sunlight hit this case, the whole thing turned to dust, because lies only survive in the dark. Hawthorne said nothing for a long moment. Then he cleared his throat, tried to straighten his robe, tried to find the voice that had terrorized this courtroom for 22 years. Case dismissed. 2 words, barely audible. He tapped the gavel once, soft, like a man knocking on his own coffin. Brenda stood. She didn't cheer. She didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She just breathed. One long, slow breath. The first real breath she'd taken in months. Behind her, a small voice. Mom! Elliot broke from Pastor Moore's side and ran down the aisle. He hit Brenda so hard, she stumbled back a step. She wrapped her arms around him and held on like the world might try to take him too. His face pressed into her chest. Her hand cradled the back of his head. It's over, baby. It's over. In the front row, Admiral Cole watched. He didn't smile. He just nodded once. Mission complete. Dawson and Brooks, the 2 SEALs, stood at attention, silent, eyes wet. They didn't need to say a word. Their presence said everything. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun hit the steps hard, bright, almost blinding after the fluorescent hell of that courtroom. Reporters were already gathering. Cameras, microphones. The Cedar Falls Gazette was there too. The same paper that had printed Brenda's mugshot on page 4 without a single word of context. Now they wanted a quote. Hawthorne tried to leave through the front entrance. Bad decision. A reporter from the national outlet stepped forward. Judge Hawthorne, do you have any comment on the allegations of racial bias in your sentencing record? Hawthorne straightened his tie, puffed his chest, tried to summon the old authority. This court has always been committed to fairness and equal justice. Today's outcome reflects that commitment. Nobody bought it. Not a single person on those steps believed a word that came out of his mouth. The reporter pressed again. Hawthorne's mask cracked. He waved his hand, turned away, and was escorted to his car by a bailiff. The car door closed. The engine started. He was gone. But the cameras kept rolling, and the story was just getting started. Back at the station, Officer Craig Ballard got the call at 3:47 that afternoon. He was placed on immediate administrative leave pending a formal internal investigation. But this time, it wasn't the Cedar Falls Police Department investigating themselves. The Veterans Justice Coalition had filed a formal complaint directly with the State Attorney General's office. The dashcam footage was submitted as primary evidence, every second of it. The functioning taillight glowing red, Brenda's full compliance, Ballard's aggressive tone, the fabricated marijuana claim, the rough cuffing, all of it, recorded by his own camera, the same camera he forgot was running. Ballard's badge was collected. His service weapon was surrendered. He walked out of the station in civilian clothes, head down, saying nothing. For the first time in his career, Craig Ballard had no authority, no power, no badge to hide behind. and it was only the beginning. The story didn't end when Brenda walked out of that courtroom. It exploded. Within 48 hours, the state attorney general opened a formal investigation into Judge Gerald Hawthorne's conduct on the bench. Not a review, not an inquiry, a full investigation. The kind with subpoena power and career-ending consequences. Derek Saunders submitted his sentencing disparity data. 10 years of cases broken down by race, charge, and outcome. The numbers were ugly. Black defendants sentenced 40% longer than white defendants for identical offenses. Motions from black defendants denied at triple the rate. Exposed like that, on paper, in black and white, there was no room for interpretation, no room for excuses. The data didn't have an opinion, it just told the truth. But the numbers were only the beginning. Donna Whitfield came forward, the quiet clerk. The woman who sat at her desk every day for 3 years, watching, listening, writing. She walked into the Attorney General's office with a small notebook, leather cover, worn edges, pages filled with dates, times, and direct quotes. 3 years of documentation. Every off-the-record remark Hawthorne made about black defendants in his chambers. Every time he said, "These people never learn." Every case where he overrode standard sentencing guidelines without justification. Every motion he dismissed without reading. Every time he looked at a black face and decided the verdict before the trial started. Donna Whitfield had written it all down, every single word. When asked why she waited so long, she said, "Because I was afraid. And then I watched what he did to that woman, and I decided being afraid wasn't a good enough reason anymore." Her testimony was devastating. Local news ran it that evening. By the next morning, it was national. Every major network, every major newspaper. The headline wrote itself. Court clerk exposes 22 years of racial bias by Virginia judge. Hawthorne's phone stopped ringing. His golf buddy stopped returning calls. The church where he was an elder released a statement distancing themselves. 22 years of power. 22 years of untouchable authority, crumbling in a matter of days. And then there was Ballard. The internal investigation was over fast. The dash cam footage left no room for debate. The taillight was functional. The marijuana claim was fabricated. The search was illegal. The arrest was unlawful. Everything Ballard wrote in his report was a lie, and his own camera proved it. Craig Ballard was terminated from the Cedar Falls Police Department. Not suspended, not reassigned, terminated. Badge gone, pension gone, career gone. But that wasn't enough, not even close. The state attorney general referred his case to the federal level. The United States Department of Justice filed charges. Filing a false police report, unlawful arrest, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, a federal offense that carries real prison time. His 2 prior complaints were reopened. Both previous victims, both black drivers, both silenced by the system the first time, were contacted and offered the opportunity to testify. Both said yes. Both had been waiting years for someone to ask. Ballard's attorney attempted to negotiate a plea deal. The federal prosecutor looked at the evidence, looked at the pattern, and said one word: no. No deal, no mercy, no shortcut. The same system that had protected Ballard for years was now the system that would hold him accountable. Meanwhile, the State Judicial Conduct Board convened a formal hearing on Judge Gerald Hawthorne. It was held in Richmond, open to the public, standing room only. Derek Saunders presented the sentencing data. Donna Whitfield presented her notebook. 3 former public defenders testified about motions denied without review. 2 retired attorneys described private conversations where Hawthorne used language about black defendants that would end any career in any other profession. Hawthorne sat in the hearing room. No robe, no gavel, no elevated bench, just a chair. Same height as everyone else. For the first time in 22 years, Gerald Hawthorne was not looking down at anyone. His attorney argued that the data was subject to interpretation and that the clerk's notes were personal opinions, not evidence. The board didn't agree. Hawthorne was suspended from the bench immediately. The board recommended formal removal. He didn't wait for them to finish. 2 days later, Gerald Hawthorne submitted his resignation, effective immediately. He released a written statement calling the proceedings a politically motivated witch hunt designed to undermine judicial independence. Nobody cared. Not one soul in Cedar Falls shed a tear. The state bar opened a separate ethics investigation. Within 6 weeks, Gerald Hawthorne was disbarred, stripped of his license to practice law in the state of Virginia. His pension benefits tied to judicial service were revoked, and the conference room in the Cedar Falls County Courthouse, the one that had carried his name on a brass plaque for 15 years, was renamed. They took the plaque down on a Tuesday morning. Donna Whitfield watched from her desk. She didn't say a word. She just closed her notebook for the last time. Now, Brenda. Cedar Falls Regional Hospital reinstated her. Full position. Full back pay for every month she was suspended. The hospital's chief administrator held a press conference. He stood at a podium with the hospital logo behind him and read a prepared statement. Brenda Taylor is one of the finest nurses this institution has ever employed. We failed her. We responded to an accusation instead of standing behind a colleague we knew to be exemplary. That failure is on us, and we are committed to making sure it never happens again. Her nursing license was fully cleared. No marks, no flags, no asterisks. Clean, the way it always should have been. The Veterans Justice Coalition covered every dollar of her legal fees, every filing, every hour of Derek's time, every cent. And 1 week after the trial, a letter arrived at Brenda's house. Official envelope, Department of the Navy seal. She opened it at the kitchen table with Elliot sitting next to her. It was from the Secretary of the Navy. A personal letter acknowledging her service, her sacrifice, and her resilience in the face of injustice. She read it once, read it again. Then she framed it and hung it on the hallway wall, right next to Elliot's Little League trophy. Elliot looked at the wall, looked at his mom. "That's a lot of frames, Mom." She smiled. "We're gonna need a bigger wall, baby." So where is everyone now? Let me tell you. Brenda Taylor went back to work. Same hospital, same ER, same night shift. The first evening she walked through those double doors in her scrubs, the entire nursing staff lined the hallway. Nobody told them to, they just did. Some clapped, some cried. One of the ER doctors, a man who had worked beside her for 5 years, handed her a coffee and said, "It's about damn time, Bren." She smiled, took the coffee, and got back to saving lives. But she didn't stop there. Brenda started volunteering with a legal aid clinic 2 nights a month, helping veterans navigate wrongful charges, connecting them with attorneys, walking them through a system she now understood from the inside. She also began speaking at local schools, not about herself, about rights, about knowing what an officer can and cannot do, about what to say and when to stay silent, about standing tall when the world tries to push you down. Elliot stood up in class one morning. His teacher had asked the students to talk about someone they admired. He didn't hesitate. My mom. She's the bravest person I know. And I'm not just saying that because she's my mom. I'm saying it because it's true. Admiral Raymond Cole used Brenda's case as the centerpiece of a national campaign to strengthen legal protections for veterans of color. He testified before a congressional subcommittee. He appeared on 3 major news networks in a single week. And he made a promise, publicly, that the Veterans Justice Coalition would take on every case like Brenda's that crossed their desk. He and Brenda stayed close. He showed up to Elliot's next Little League game, sat in the bleachers with a hot dog in one hand and a foam finger in the other. Brenda laughed so hard she almost spilled her drink. It was the first time she had laughed like that in over a year. Derek Saunders received a commendation from the state bar for his work on the case. The same legal community that had watched Hawthorne bully him in open court now stood and applauded him at a formal dinner. He used the momentum to launch a pro bono initiative, a data-driven project that analyzed sentencing patterns across Virginia courts to identify racial bias before it destroyed more lives. Donna Whitfield was offered a position with the State Judicial Oversight Office. The woman who had spent 3 years writing in a notebook at her desk was now helping build the systems that hold judges accountable. Her notebook became a case study in judicial ethics courses at 2 Virginia law schools. Officer Craig Ballard stood trial in federal court. He was convicted on all counts: deprivation of civil rights under color of law, filing a false police report, unlawful arrest. The judge, a different judge, a fair one, sentenced him to 36 months in federal prison. Ballard stood in the courtroom in a suit that didn't fit right, staring at the floor. He had nothing to say. And Judge Gerald Hawthorne? He was last seen loading boxes into a moving truck outside his Cedar Falls home on a Saturday morning. No neighbors came out to help. No one waved. The house sold 3 weeks later. The town didn't mourn his departure. They barely noticed. All right, let me put it like this. Yeah, the story, I made it up. But that feeling, like people are already judging you before you even say anything, yeah, that's real. That happens all the time. So it's not even about, is this real or not? Nah, it's more like, when you see that happen, what do you do?